Hey friends, Vincent here, this is Fearless in Rust, where we keep Rust clean and simple. Let's go. Today, we are going to have an advanced Hello Rust lesson. We'll go beyond the basics, diving into println, eprintln, print and hovers, using debug mode, pretty printing and different display modes. By the end, you understand how to harness the full power of Rust output system. First, let's write a classic Hello Rust program and compile it directly with rustc. So, println Hello Rust. Save this file and open your terminal to compile it manually. So here in src, then we use the rustc command, man.rs, and just execute the main. If you see Hello Rust, congrats, you just compile and run your first Rust program. Now, let's dive into the advanced usage of Rust output macros. While println is the most commonly used macro, Rust offers several others for different types of output. These are useful depending on whether you are debugging, logging errors, or printing more complex data. So first we have the println macro. So println output to standard output. This is commonly used for printing to the console. It's ideal for typical program output. So let's just write a little variant. Let's say Rust, and here just replace with curly brackets and put a variable. Okay, now let's execute with cargo. Okay, we are done. So next part, the eprintln. So eprintln macro. So eprintln outputs to standard error, which is a special output stream that programs use to send error messages or warnings. Unlike standard output, which is for normal program output, standard error is meant for problems, diagnostics or logs, and it stays separate so you can redirect or filter errors without mixing them with normal output. So let's write an error message. Let's say error fail to open the file. Tac, okay. Let's an oops. Tac. Now let's execute. Okay, here we go. Now let's talk about eprint macro. So here is the same standard output. So eprint is similar to eprintln, but it does not automatically happen a new line. So you can control where the line ends. So let's say print error and eprint again. Fail to open the file. Oops. Tac. Okay, let's execute. When you run a program that doesn't print a trailing new line, most shells print a literal % or similar marker at the end of the output to indicate the cursor position. That's why you see here the % symbol. Okay, now let's finish with the print macro. So print is like println, but without the new line. Useful if you need to control line breaks manually. So for instance, print. This is printing on the same line. and it continues here. Okay, execute again. Up, I will increase the size of the terminal, and here you see you have everything on the same line. Okay, next let's get into debug printing. This is a powerful feature in Rust, especially for working with complex data types like structs or enums. So, for debug printing, this is the debug format, so curly brackets, colon, question mark, debug format. Okay, this here is a placeholder that prints a debug representation of a value. It's useful for inspecting non-primitive data types like structs or vectors during development. So first, let's create a person structure. So derives, debug. So here, this attribute allows Rust to automatically implement the debug trait for the struct, enabling us to print its internal state. So struct person. Okay, let's give a name with string type and the edge with unsigned 32 type. Okay, now let's create a person in the main function. And here, thanks to Rust Rover, just type the name of the struct and it can add the missing fields. Useful if you have a bunch of fields. Okay, name, let's say Rust Learner. The edge, let's say 35. Okay, and now let's use the debug format. So here, curly brackets, colon, question mark. We pass the person variable and let's execute. Okay, and here you see we have, I will put in comments how we did before. It will be better. Okay, and here you see you have the debug format for the person. So you have the name of a struct, the name of each field, and the values. Okay, now let's dive into pretty debugging. Rust provides pretty debugging to print data structures in a more human-readable indented format. This is especially useful for structs, enums, and other complex types. It outputs the debug representation with pretty formatting, which includes indents and new lines, making it easier to read and inspect large or nested structures. So first, let's add an address struct. So here the same, we'll need the attribute, derive, and the debug trait. So struct address. Okay, let's give a street in string, a city, the same in string, and a zip code unsigned 32. Okay, now let's add the address to the person struct. Okay. Now let's create a new address. So here the same, just by typing the address struct, we can add automatically the missing fields. Okay, about the street, let's say 123 Main Street. About the city, let's say Roseville, and zip code 12345. And let's add the address to the person struct here. Oh, by the way, at this point, if the field's name and the name of the variable or the parameters if you are inside the function is the same, you can just type once. It will work. Okay, now let's print the pretty debugging for this person. So println. So here pretty debugging, so curly brackets, colon, sharp, question mark, and the person. And let's execute. This will produce a nicely indented output. As you see, this is the debug format, and this is the pretty debugging. Much more readable for us. If you want now to display data in a clean, human readable way, use curly brackets. This is called the display format and is meant for end user output. In contrast, use the debug format, which is designed for developers and often include extra informations like quotes around strings or struct field names. You can also use inside the curly brackets for special formatting option, like we are going to see. So for now, in the main method, let's put everything in comments and let's show the display format. So let's create a name. Let's take the famous Bob. Okay, let's create a H2, 35. Okay, first, let's use the display formatting. So println, here let's say name, hedge, and let's use what we have created. Okay. Okay, this is the display formatting. Now, let's use, just to compare, the debug formatting. So, curly brackets, colon, question mark, and let's say name and edge. Okay, here we have display formatting and debug formatting. And now, if you want, there is a plenty of special formatting options. So let's just show one special formatting. So let's see a padded edge, for instance. Okay, now we want to put the edge on 5 spaces and right align. So how to do this? You can do this like that and pass the edge here. Okay, let's run. Okay, and you see now with this special formatting we have the edge on 5 spaces and right align. Finally, let's explore custom formatting. Rust allows you to implement the FMT display trait for your types, giving you full control over how they are printed. If you create your home types like structs, you can implement the display traits to control how instances of that type are printed. Okay, let's give an example. So first, we need to use the standard FMT. So this brings the FMT module from the standard library into scope. Now, for the person struct, we need to implement the display trait. So implement display for person. Here, FMT. Oh, I have to put FMT here too first. Take now FMT. Okay, this here defines the FMT method. which writes the formatted output into the given formatter and returns a FMT result. So now let's use the write macro with f as parameter. Now let's custom what we want to show. So okay, let's say here here's hold, and now what do we need? We need the name and the age. Okay. Now let's use again a person we declared here. Tag. Let's put this in comment. So we have address, we have the person, and we want to use this implementation for the display trait. So we just have to use println, and here this is the display default trait with just curly brackets. Now let's run. Okay, here we go. You see, by using the default display format, it's just using what we have created here with the write macro in the custom display implementation for the person struct. This is fully customizable. Okay guys, so here's a summary of what you have learned. How to use the standard println, error-specific eprint and basic output print macros, how to print complex types with using the debug trait, how to use the pretty debugging with indented human-readable output, how to control formatting, and how to implement the display trait for custom types, like here. That's a wrap for this expert-level Hello Rust lesson. You have learned how to leverage Rust output system, and you are now ready to use different macros and formatting options in your project. That's it. Thanks for your time. Like and subscribe for No Fluff Rust every week. Drop question below, I answer to all. Stay fearless.